The next thing we want to look at is texturing our feathers. So right now they're just using a flat color. If I go into the material editor, you can see that I just have this flat green color for our feathers right now. And in Mesh from Strands, we have a multitude of different abilities to deal with our feathers, both in UVs as well as in textures. So the default actually gets its UVs from the underlying mesh. So for instance, if I go and just add maybe a checker map, so we can see what's happening there. And we'll set this to maybe 5 by 5. You can see that the UVs for the character underneath are used, and those checkers are propagated onto the feathers. And this could be very useful because you can paint up an entire character map that looks like, feathers in Photoshop on the UV layout. And then you can just get those colors right onto the feathers that you're using, which is really pretty nice. Now, the other option, of course, is to texture each individual feather. So if I go in here under Mesh from Strands, I can choose that I want a UV per strand. So I'll choose UV per strand, and you can see that switches over. And now we have those UVs. I'll just adjust it to maybe 2 by 5 on each feather. That means I can design a feather texture that I want to use for every single feather here, which is really good. So if I go in, I just have a simple feather texture here that I have in the material editor. If I go in to the color, you can see it there. So there's the color for our feather texture. And I also have a pretty simple opacity map that is for the feather texture too. So if I just go and I apply this material to my feathers, then you can see that we both get the transparency as well as the feather texture on each one of these feathers, which can be really good, possibly for iconic and certainly for more photorealistic characters. So let's just go back and take a look at that there. May want to up the hair count, so just so we can get a good idea of what's going on, we'll go with 45,000 feathers there. And we can really get, this erodes the feathers a little bit because we've used an opacity map, but we can get a good idea of the type of feathers that we might get out of this. Now, with those options for UVs, what you can also do is set a multi-material on these feathers. So let's just select the feathers, and we're going to apply a material that has multiple materials. So I have kind of the dark feathers, the mid feathers, and the light feathers, and I'm going to apply that there. So right off the bat, we're only getting this first material here, and that's because what we want to go down into material IDs, and we can decide how we're going to distribute these. So first, I have only the number that is there, so I'm going to set that to 3 material IDs, and I can set this to scatter randomly if I want. So I can adjust the scattering, and now I get these material IDs just randomly all over the character. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit here, and you can see each feather gets a different color going on the character, and that can be a color as well as a texture, as we just saw. So actually, if I go in, we'll just do a quick look here at how our character is looking pretty neat, kind of nice with that randomization. And now if I go into each one of these, I've just set up a checker map just to give you the idea of how this could work and what you could do as far as a real pretty in-depth production pipeline for really having a lot of control over each one of these feathers and what kind of textures you would use and how you would map it. And that's one thing we really wanted to do with this feathering system, is make sure that we had enough control for grooming, textures, and our rendering, of course. So let's go in and zoom in slightly here. And we can see we have funky colors, but you can see that we have those UVs per strand there, as well as the different type of checker on each one that's been propagating on the mesh, which is really nice. So I'll set that back to our camera, and we'll probably turn those off because I just want those on to kind of showcase that the UVs are there, and we're able to map them in any way that we want, which is really great. So I'll go back through, and I'm just going to turn off that checker map. And there we go. For this character that's a little bit more of an iconic character, it's probably going to be a good idea, just to use the basic flat colors in most cases But you know, we do have the ability, because we're using different materials, to use different specular and reflectivity and other things like that. So for instance, if I wanted to go into these mid colors and I wanted to adjust, you know, how the specular or the reflectivity was on only a few of the feathers, then that's something that I could do here. And that's really a nice, powerful feature of being able to use the multi-materials on your feathers. So that's something to definitely take advantage of with that system. Now, the other huge benefit to using material IDs is, in order to take those material IDs and put them exactly where you want on the bird. So in this case, you can see that I have a UV map here, and it's indicated with black and white values where we would like to see different material IDs on the character. And this is using the UVs of the current character. So anywhere that's white would be material ID 1, anywhere that's gray would be material ID 2, and anywhere that's black would be material ID 3. And that way we can set up as many as we want. We could have 10 or 20 different materials here, just as long as they were different equal gradations. So I'm going to take this here, and I'm just going to drag it into my scattering map. I'll say that I want to use it as an instance, and I'll uncheck scatter randomly just for the sake of it. And what you can see now is, if I go in here and kind of zoom in, now these areas that I've indicated that are going to be different feather patches or areas are all using a different color from the character. So now, of course, with that different color, these could be different mapped. So this one would be a whited, little lighter kind of tufted feather. We could have that, and if these wanted to be kind of darker and a little more scraggly, we could have that, and that would really be great. So this gives us even more control over how we're going to map and put materials on our feathers.